I think almost all of you know me. My name is Chelsea, and I've been coming to Hillside for the last few years with my husband, Brian. We live in Somerville and love being a part of this amazing Hillside community. I am no expert on the Bible or Christianity, but I can offer my own interpretation of the passage that Brian read for us today. For me, this passage from James speaks to my own connection to God, when I feel his presence and how I notice him showing up in everyday life. After only somewhat joking that I needed a children's Bible to prepare for today's sermon, Reverend Tom graciously loaned me an interpreter's guide to the Bible. The guide shared how this passage from James that we just heard seems like the most obvious good sense and asks, why does it need saying? As I reread the passage and considered James's message, I agreed and began to doubt if it would make for a compelling and worthwhile sermon, or if it is simply reiterating what we know to be common sense. But the interpreter's guide goes on to say that the evidence is overwhelming that precisely this reminder, above all, needs to be made repeatedly and urgently. I think this is especially true and relevant given the current climate of the world we are living in. We so often witness or hear about hateful and harmful actions being taken in the name of religion. Everything from mass shootings and suicide bombers to discrimination, harassment, exclusionary policies, war, and violence. We also hear a lot of empty claims made, where words and actions do not align, or words coexist with inaction. Thoughts and prayers are not meaningless, but when paired with action, their impact is so much greater. James identifies the care for those in need as the mark of true religion. A faith that refuses to help those in need is false. According to James, faith and action are not separable. Action brings faith to life. Your faith is demonstrated through your actions. Faith without action is empty. You can believe in the right thing, but if your behavior contradicts it, then that belief is useless. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote about this topic in his book, Strength to Love. He said, "One of the great tragedies of life is that men seldom bridge the gulf between practice and profession, between doing and saying. A persistent schizophrenia leaves so many of us tragically divided against ourselves. On the one hand, we proudly profess certain sublime and noble principles, but on the other hand, we sadly practice the very antithesis of these principles. How often are our lives characterized by a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds? We talk eloquently about our commitment to the principles of Christianity, and yet our lives are saturated with the practices of paganism. We proclaim our devotion to democracy, but we sadly practice the very opposite of the democratic creed. We talk passionately about peace, and at the same time, we assiduously prepare for war. We make our fervent pleas for the high road of justice, and then we tread unflinchingly the low road of injustice. This strange dichotomy, this agonizing gulf between the ought and the is, represents the tragic theme of man's earthly pilgrimage." Shifting gears, some of you may be familiar with the 5 love languages. In the early 1990s, Dr. Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages, which identified 5 different ways people express and receive love. While intended to help strengthen relationships with romantic partners, I think many of the love languages can be applied to various relationships in your life. The 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, receiving gifts, and acts of service. Wikipedia does note that empirical evidence does not strongly support the book's core claims. However, I think there is value in recognizing that acts of service are one of the core ways that we as humans both give and receive love. Most of us were taught the golden rule growing up: treat others how you would like to be treated. I know it seems so simple and basic, but it is my belief that God is most present in the small, everyday moments when we are treated with kindness by others and when we treat others with kindness. These are the moments where I feel God's light shining through, and at a time when our world feels so dark, I truly believe this is how we can make the biggest difference in pushing back against the darkness and not allowing it to win. In the words of the incomparable Bad Bunny, the only thing more powerful than hate is love. I want to recognize that we are all busy and have our own challenges, needs, stressors, and struggles we are dealing with, and those should not be negated. I fully believe that we have to take care of ourselves and fill our own cups before we can pour into someone else's. But meaningful actions don't always have to take up a lot of your time, money, or energy. And selfishly, they often feel rewarding to you as well. Little actions are often the most powerful. Alerting a stranger when they have dropped something or left something behind. Stopping to ask someone who just took a hard fall on the ski slopes if they are okay. And that's usually me that is taking the fall. Being gracious with your waiter when they are clearly slammed and the service is slower than usual. Holding the door for someone on crutches or who has their hands full. Bringing your neighbor's packages inside your apartment building so they don't get stolen. Giving up your seat on the T to someone who may need it more. Helping your neighbor shovel snow during a nor'easter. Waking up at 4 a.m. to drop your friend off at the airport. These are the small moments where I feel faith being demonstrated through action. I feel God's light shining through all of your actions as well. Each time you give a handshake or a friendly smile during the sharing of God's peace, sitting with someone new to Hillside at coffee hour, the freshly baked bread made by Dave for communion, cooking for the Friday cafe, helping our elderly friends up the front steps when it's icy out, our Hillside children lighting the candle together, distributing bags of groceries to families on Thanksgiving, serving our unhoused neighbors in Davis Square, knitting hats for the community in the winter, cooking a favorite family recipe for a Hillside potluck, giving a blessing to Easter eggs or backpacks, sharing your beautiful musical talents with us each week. Your actions speak loudly. How you show up for your Hillside community, your work community, your local community, your family and friends, your neighbors, and even those you don't like or don't know speaks volumes. It speaks louder than words or faith alone. We are lucky that Hillside is already doing such a great job of prioritizing faith in action versus faith alone. We recently filled the lavometer with acts of love our congregation carried out, and as Hillside celebrates 100 years in this lovely space, Reverend Tom has created a list of 100 acts of love we can choose from if we are short on ideas. Service each Sunday ends with Reverend Tom reminding us that although the church service has ended, our service to the community has just begun. As we now take our wildflower seed bombs from the lavometer out into the world to plant, let this serve as a perfect metaphor for the beauty and positivity that can grow through loving deeds and how easy it is to spread that love. As this passage from James highlights, thoughts and prayers are not enough. Faith matters and words matter, but without action, they fall short. Through action is how they are lived out. I will leave you with this question. How will you continue to demonstrate your faith, live out God's love, and shine God's light through your actions? Let us keep James's important reminder close to heart as we move through the rest of our day, our week, and the year ahead. Let us serve as examples for others in our lives of how God's love can be lived out through action and not faith alone. Amen.